So week one of the 2014 NFL season is officially in the books, and some teams and some fan bases have a lot of reason to be excited. And then there's people like me as Bears fans, and you can only imagine. So let's talk about week number one. I'll talk about some of the winners, some of the losers, and then some of the stars from the opening week of the 2014 NFL season. I'll start with the winners. I think you got to go with the Seattle Seahawks. The defending Super Bowl champions owned and dominated the Green Bay Packers, who are perceived to be one of the elite teams in the NFC, 36-16. I mean, they dominated in all facets. Their offense had a whole different level of explosiveness. You could see the impact that a healthy Percy Harvin could have for Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. You also saw what Russell Wilson could do, and you saw that while that defense maybe quite isn't as dominant as it was in 2013, it's still a really good defense, a top flight elite defense in the National Football League, and the Seahawks definitely made a statement that they are clearly the team to beat in the National Football League. I think the Detroit Lions did well for themselves in week number one. Now you can sit there and say that it didn't do much in terms of beating a bad Giants team, and that may be true, but this is a Lions team that early on was showing some of the old traits of shooting themselves in the foot a little bit while having some big time explosive plays, namely from Megatron Calvin Johnson. Hey, Megatron, a player with an actual cool nickname. Imagine that. But the Lions settled down in the second half, and they were very impressive in so many different facets. Their offense showed these new weapons off, like Golden Tate. They showed what they could do with some 2 and 3 tight end sets. And the defense played very, very well. I think this is a Lions team that's going to make some noise in the NFC North. I also think the Carolina Panthers have to be classified as big-time winners. Anytime you go on the road week one and beat a divisional rival, that's a good thing. When you do that without your star franchise quarterback Cam Newton, you have to be considered big-time winners. They were shutting out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers until the fourth quarter. Their defense obviously played really well. The offense behind Derek Anderson did more than enough. I think the Panthers are winners, and ultimately us as fans. The NFL season is here. Football is back. What's not to like about that? Now we go to some of the losers, and I'll start off with the New England Patriots. They were doing all right in the first half, but in the second half, you could make the argument that Tom Brady looked old, but even more so, that offensive line was atrocious and failed to protect him. And the Miami Dolphins came storming back to beat the Patriots, going away with it. The New England Patriots, a team that many people project to make it to Super Bowl 49, if not win this year's Super Bowl. They started off the season 0-1. Those high expectations, they go on the road and basically lay a second half egg against a divisional opponent like the Miami Dolphins. Not a good way to start off the season. Same thing for the Chicago Bears. The Bears are who I told you they were. I'm not letting them off talk. Cutler was Cutler. Their lack of offensive depth showed once players like Garza and Slauson on the offensive line went down, once Alshon Jeffrey went down outside at wide receiver. Their defense is their defense, and just because they added new names, it doesn't mean they're any better. Their defense is bad. The Bills ran for over 190 yards on them. The Bears lost a game that most people thought that they should have won. This is something that bad teams do. They lose games that they should, for all intents and purposes, win. And the Bears got run over. They made E.J. Manuel look solid. And Cutler's fourth quarter interception was just a bad day at the office for the Bears. And yippee, the 49ers are next. Oh, boy. I think Kansas City Chiefs have got to be classified as big-time losers, too. Not only did they get handled at Arrowhead by the Tennessee Titans, but you lose both Derek Johnson and Mike DeVito for the season to ruptured Achilles tendons. It looks like it could be a rough start to the season and a rough season in general for the Chiefs if something doesn't turn just like that. But I think the biggest loser of week number one has to be Roger Goodell. And maybe didn't start off that way, but as the week progressed and you got especially to Monday and the whole TMZ thing really started to come out, the shit basically, for all intents and purposes, hit the fan. And I think nobody looks like a bigger loser right now in the NFL than Roger Goodell, period. And I'll be talking about that more in another video. In terms of some of the stars of week number one, I think you got to look at Matt Ryan throwing for over 440 yards, a franchise record, and leading the Falcons to an impressive home victory against the New Orleans Saints. I think Noshan Moreno, who played very well, especially in the second half, running for over 130 yards and leading the Dolphins to their upset victory over the New England Patriots. I think you got to go with Julius Thomas. His 3 touchdowns were instrumental in the Broncos storming out of the gate so strongly in the first half to beat the Indianapolis Colts. I look at Cameron Wake as well from the Miami Dolphins. He was dominant. He was in I almost said Peyton Manning. He was in Tom Brady's face a good portion of the game, in particular in the second half. He was a defensive star, and again, another key component of why the Dolphins were able to beat the Patriots in week number 1. And I think you got to go with Richard Sherman. How often is it that a guy that doesn't defend a pass, he doesn't have a tackle, no interceptions, no sacks, no anything, no forced fumbles, no fumble recoveries? Richard Sherman did nothing. And yet he was a big-time star. All types of debate on Twitter during the Packers-Seahawks game about whether or not he's the best corner in the National Football League. Here is Richard Sherman, who put so much fear in the hearts and minds of Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers offense that they basically just sacrificed Jarrett Boykin out on that side. They didn't throw at Richard Sherman a single time. In fact, Richard Sherman was so dominant in the minds of the Green Bay Packers, they basically stayed away from that entire side of the field. It was pretty much middle to left. Anything on this right-hand side, they weren't going there. When you can, with one player, effectively change a team's game plan to the point where they are only utilizing half or 2/3 of the football field, you've done a lot to help make a team one-dimensional and make sure that you're going to win the football game. And I think for that reason alone, Richard Sherman has to be one of the stars of week number 1. It was a great week. For football in general, the fact that football is back. Obviously, Roger Goodell is a boob. My Bears suck, as I said they were going to. The Patriots have a lot of questions. The Chiefs have a lot of questions. But there's some positives, too. Teams like the Titans and the Texans starting off the season strong. The Jacksonville Jaguars playing in the first half like the team that could be somewhere down the road. And then in the second half, finding a way to play like the team that they are now and getting blown out late by the Philadelphia Eagles. Lots of interesting things. Week number 2, though, is perhaps the most important week of the season because you have a chance to go 1-1. If you won or lost the first week, you could go 2-0, or you could go 0-2. It really is a critical week. Football's back, and that's the most important thing of all. Thank God!